Have you heard the exciting tale of the Spirit Warrior of Kano? Grab a cup of Gary. For me, I'm drinking tea as we go on this story together. In the ancient city of Kano, a land known for its deep culture, bustling markets, and powerful warriors, there was a legend that only a few dared to whisper about. The legend of the Spirit Warrior. It was said that in times of great need, a chosen warrior would rise, endowed with supernatural powers to protect the land. But with such power came a dark curse, one that consumed not only the body, but the very soul of the warrior. Our tale begins with the story of a young man called Jibril, a humble blacksmith with a reputation for his exceptional skill in crafting weapons. His father had been a warrior, serving the emir of Kano before his sudden disappearance. The mystery of his father's disappearance always haunted him, but his mother, Aisha, always diverted the conversation, only revealing that his father had been chosen for a very great task. One hot evening, as the sun set behind the majestic city walls, a great unrest began to stir in the city of Kano. Rumors of a marauding force from the north spread like wildfire. This force, led by the feared warlord Barka, had been ravaging villages, leaving destruction in their wake. The emir's warriors, though skilled, had fallen one by one to Barka's armies, who were said to be touched by dark magic. As the tension in Kano grew, Jibril found himself troubled by strange dreams. Each night, he dreamt of a glowing sword, its hilt wrapped in ancient runes, pulsating with an eerie light. A voice, deep and otherworldly, called out to him, beckoning him to a place he did not recognize, a desolate wasteland beyond the city walls. But what disturbed him the most was the vision of his father, standing beside the sword, his eyes empty and hollow. Jibril woke in his cold sweat every night, confused and afraid. His mother noticed the change in him and knew that the time was right. One evening, as they sat together in their modest home, Aisha revealed a secret that had been buried for years. "Jibril," she began, her voice heavy with sorrow, "there is something that I must tell you about your father. He was chosen by the ancient spirits of our land, the same spirits that have watched over Kano for centuries. They granted him great power, but in return, they demanded his soul. He became the Spirit Warrior." Jibril stared at her, his mind reeling. The Spirit Warrior? But that's just a story, a myth. "It's no myth," Aisha said gravely. "Your father was bound to the spirits, and they gave him strength beyond any man. But there is a price. Once the task of the Spirit Warrior is complete, his soul is taken, and he is no longer the man he once was." Tears welled up in Jibril's eyes. "What happened to him? Where did he go?" Aisha hesitated, her voice breaking. "He was sent to stop a great evil, just like now. But when he returned, he was no longer the man I loved. The spirit had consumed him. He became a shadow, a shell of himself. And then one night, he vanished." Jibril sat in stunned silence, the weight of his father's fate pressing down on him. His dreams now made sense. The sword, the wasteland, his father's empty eyes. It was all connected. But before he could ask more, there was a loud knock at the door. It was the emir's guards. "Jibril, you are summoned by the emir. The city is in grave danger." Jibril's heart pounded as he followed the guards to the palace. There, the emir stood, surrounded by his advisors, all wearing grim expressions. "We have heard of your skill, Jibril," the emir said, in voice steady but urgent. Our warriors are failing, and the city is on the brink of destruction. We need someone who can craft a weapon strong enough to defeat Barka and his dark forces. Jibril felt the weight of the task on his shoulders, but before he could respond, the voice from his dreams echoed in his mind. The sword of the Spirit Warrior. He hesitated and then spoke. There is a weapon, great Emir, but it is not one I can craft. It is one that already exists, bound to the spirits of this land. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. The Emir's eyes narrowed. What do you speak of, Jibril? I speak of the sword of the Spirit Warrior, Jibril replied, his voice steady. It is a weapon of great power, but it comes with a curse. Whoever wields it becomes the Spirit Warrior, bound to the spirits, and must give up their soul. The Emir's advisors whispered among themselves, fearful and uncertain. The Emir himself looked troubled, but determined. If this sword exists, then it is our only hope. We cannot let Kano fall. You, Jibril, must find this sword and become the Spirit Warrior. Jibril's heart sank. He had feared that this moment would come, but deep down he knew that there was no other way. The dreams, his father's fate, the growing darkness, it had all been leading to this moment. That night, Jibril set out on a journey to the wasteland from his dreams, where the sword lay hidden. The path was treacherous, filled with dangers both seen and unseen. As he ventured deeper into the desert, the air grew thick with an unnatural chill, and strange whispers filled his ears. After days of travel, Jibril finally arrived at the desolate place from his visions. In the center of the wasteland stood a stone altar, and upon it, the glowing sword rested, just as he had seen in his dreams. His hand trembled as he reached for it, and as his fingers wrapped around the hilt, a surge of power shot through him. The ground beneath him shook, and the spirits of the land rose from the earth, surrounding him in a swirling vortex of light and shadow. Their voices were cold and distant. You are the chosen one, Jibril, they intoned. You will wield the sword, and with it, you will defeat the evil that threatens Kano. But know this, once your task is over, your soul will be ours. Jibril nodded, his resolve hardening. I accept my fate. With the sword in hand, Jibril returned to Kano, where the city had fallen into chaos. Barka's forces had breached the outer walls, and the people were fleeing in terror. But as Jibril marched into battle, the power of the sword coursing through him, the tide began to turn. Barka himself, a hulking figure clad in black armor, stepped forward to face him. His eyes gleamed with malevolent energy, and he laughed as he raised his weapon. You think you can defeat me, boy? I am touched by the dark spirit of the north. No mortal can stand against me. But Jibril said nothing. The spirits within the sword whispered in his mind, guiding his movements. The two clashed, the sound of metal against metal ringing out across the battlefield. Each strike from Barka was powerful, but Jibril's agility and the supernatural strength of the sword kept him on equal footing. As the battle raged, Barka began to realize he was not fighting an ordinary man. His strikes became more frantic, his confidence wavering, and his attack desperate. Finally, with one swift motion, Jibril disarmed him and plunged the glowing sword deep into Barka's chest. A deafening scream filled the air as the dark magic that had empowered Barka erupted from his body, dissolving him into ash. The spirit's victory chant echoed in the wind, and Barka's forces, leaderless and terrified, scattered into the desert. Kano was saved, but the price was clear. Jibril, victorious, but now bound by the spirits, felt their grip tighten around his soul. He knew his time was over. And soon, like his father before him, he would vanish into the shadows. As the city celebrated its deliverance, Jibril stood on the outskirts, watching from afar. His mother found him there, her eyes filled with sorrow, but also pride. "You've done it, my son," she said softly, "but I know what this means." He nodded, unable to speak. The spirits were already calling him, their voices growing louder in his mind. "Thank you, mother," he whispered, tears filling his eyes, "for everything." With a final pained look at the city he had just saved, Jibril turned and walked into the night, fading into legend, just as his father had before him. The Spirit Warrior of Kano, once a man, now a ghost, bound by duty, forever watching over the land in secret. And so the legend continues, whispered among the people of Kano, the story of the Spirit Warrior, a savior cursed to walk among the shadows, waiting for the day when the land would call upon him once more. There you have it, the story of the Spirit Warrior of Kano. Did you enjoy that story? Subscribe to this channel for more. See you next time.